Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, August 24th. Today is day 323 since October 7th and the attacks by Hamas on the south of Israel. The biggest news this weekend is preparations for tomorrow's meetings in Cairo, as a Hamas delegation is set to arrive there today to hear from mediators about the results of the latest negotiations for a round of ceasefire hostage talks. Hamas has said that they've not agreed to the talks, but they do arrive in Cairo. They said that their presence doesn't mean that they've agreed to participate in the next round of negotiations, which are calling to pressure Israel. They are calling to pressure Israel to stop obstructing the implementation of a permanent ceasefire. According to Hamas, in a statement, the group is committed to what was approved on July 2nd. Based on US President Joe Biden's proposal, Hamas has said they're ready to implement that proposal. White House spokesperson John Kirby said, "We need Hamas to participate, and we need to get down to the brass tacks of locking in these details." You'll recall conversations in Doha last week. The sticking points seem to be the Philadelphia corridor on the border between Gaza and Egypt. Also, Israel's presence long-term on the Netzarim corridor, which is between South Gaza and North Gaza. The summit in Cairo tomorrow, Sunday, will continue negotiations for a deal. It's set to be attended by the CIA Director William Burns, the U.S. Middle East envoy Brett McGurk, who works for the White House, Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani, and the head of Egyptian intelligence Abbas Kamel, along with an Israeli delegation who's led by their Mossad chief David Barnea, and including the Shin Bet chief Ronan Bar, and the head of IDF's Missing and Captive Soldiers Division, Major General Nitzan Alon. Biden spoke with Egypt's President El-Sisi and Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim Al Thani on the need to finalize a deal and to overcome the remaining barriers, according to a White House statement. And following Netanyahu's meeting yesterday, Friday, with hostages released from Gaza and their families, one of the meeting participants said to Haaretz that she told the prime minister to take responsibility for the October 7th massacre. Participants said that Netanyahu's wife, Sarah, then responded that the Israeli army is also responsible. In terms of what's been happening between Israel and Lebanon, over 100 rockets were launched from Lebanon into Israel yesterday, sparking fires. They directly struck two homes in the northern Israeli city of Kiryat Shmona. There were no casualties reported. The Israeli military said that they hit operatives in Hezbollah's rocket and missile unit and other targets in Lebanon on Friday as well. Hezbollah said 7 of its members were killed in Israeli strikes, but according to Lebanese reports, the number was much higher. The Lebanon's health ministry said that an 8-year-old boy was also killed in an Israeli airstrike on a village in South Lebanon. In the West Bank, a Palestinian woman was lightly wounded in an attack by Jewish settlers in the West Bank village of Susia near Hebron. A resident said 8 settlers were wearing face coverings and they entered a village with a few teenagers. They went into homes, they beat a woman, and they also reportedly wounded a man. The resident reported acts of vandalism. The police said they're opening an investigation. Israeli police also said there were mutual assaults in the village and that also all involved were dispersed. Channel 12 News in Israel reported that Shin Bet's head, Ronan Bar, told Netanyahu there are essentially no police in Israel, and that during a discussion based on last week's deadly settler raid on that Palestinian town of Jit, we've been talking about that a lot in the West Bank, the police were essentially nowhere to be found. We discussed previously that many people said the attacks on that village were so bad, it was like a pogrom. Homes were burned, cars were burned, people were attacked. Only 2 arrests have been made in the attacks on that village of Jet. So that was discussed on Israeli news in the last couple of days. Protests have been calling for a ceasefire and hostage release deal throughout Israel, and demonstrations against Israel's ruling coalition are set to take place across the country tonight, Saturday night. And the name of the soldier who was killed in Gaza yesterday, Sergeant First Class Evayatar Atwar, was 24 years old. That was released in Israel today. Updates on what's been happening in Gaza. The news continues to just be horrific. Relentless Israeli attacks across Gaza have killed at least 59 people since dawn this morning, including an infant girl who was killed in an Israeli shelling of the Berej refugee camp. As you know, and we've been talking about the forced displacement out of one of the humanitarian zones. We'll have a video summarizing the displacements coming out early next week, summarizing how many times Palestinians have been displaced in Gaza since October. This eight-month-old girl and her mother were killed when Israeli forces shelled their home in the Berej refugee camp in the central Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. In the last few days, more than 100,000 people, again, have been forced to evacuate Deir al-Balah, which is one of the areas I was just mentioning that is supposed to be, it's the main central area where the humanitarian agencies are operating out of in central Gaza. And Israel's army has been operating heavily there, attacking areas that are heavily populated with homes, civilians, tens of refugees and displaced people in Khan Yunis and also the Nuseirat refugee camp. The Israeli Defense Forces said that today they killed dozens of, quote, terrorists over the last days in Gaza and in Gaza City and in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, and that they've located many weapons. The IDF's Arabic language spokesperson by the last name of Adrai called on residents of several central Gaza neighborhoods today to evacuate their homes immediately. The IDF also said that Taha Abu Nada, a Hamas operative engaged in the production of military equipment and weaponry, was killed in an airstrike in Gaza today. The UN officials say that Palestinian children are paying the heaviest price as Gaza faces critical humanitarian aid shortages and a spike in malnutrition. And humanitarian aid agencies are saying that the least amount of aid has been allowed into Gaza since the start of the war in October. The health ministry has reported the latest death toll numbers at a minimum of 40,334 Palestinians killed, and those wounded being at least 93,356 wounded. And just a reminder that these are direct numbers of those killed and those injured. So people who maybe die a few days after an attack or a few days after a bombing don't count in those death toll numbers. Syria media reported that yesterday Israel struck targets in central Syria from Lebanon airspace, wounding 7 people. And U.S. Central Command today said that its forces, U.S. Central Command forces, killed a Saudi militant from an al-Qaeda-linked group in a drone strike that the U.S. perpetrated in Syria. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, stressed the court has jurisdiction to investigate Israeli nationals and asked judges to urgently decide on arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Gallant, in addition to the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Mohammed Diaf and Ismail Hananiah, the other 2 Hamas leaders for whom Khan requested warrants, have since been assassinated. A French police officer was injured today when a blazing car exploded in front of a synagogue on the coastal town of La Grande Motte. A police union representative said the police said that they were treating the incident as an attempted arson. According to Le Figaro, the suspect was caught on a surveillance video wearing a red keffiyeh and a Palestinian flag around their waist, with a handgun tucked into their waistband and holding plastic bottles filled with clear liquid. So that was an incident that happened in France today. That's an update of the last 24 hours. Continue to pray for peace, call for a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire, which is so incredibly and desperately needed on this 323rd day since all of these horrors began on October 7th. May God go before us. Amen.